Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien, and this is my super subjective comic book countdown where I share some of the random thoughts I had about comics while I count them down in order of my particular enjoyment of them as a reader. I got 14 comics this past Wednesday, which was Wednesday, September 29th. It's already October 5th, Tuesday, so new comics will be coming out soon. There was a lot to read, plus I'm reading other other things. So it took me a while to plow through them. And it felt like something in my mood made me kind of focus on little details at times. To the point where I started counting how many pages each issue had and how many pages of ads they had. And I wrote those down. I'm going to try to remember to tell you them with each issue. And I did not count the back matter or the letters page or preview of the next issue's cover and that sort of thing as part of the story or part of the ads. So the pages might not always add up. But Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is my number 14 comic. I enjoyed this the least. And to be specific, I think I was kind of annoyed by it the most. It was $5, I guess because of the card stock and just because they can charge more money for Tom King comics. It had 24 pages, so maybe a few extra pages, and it had 11 pages of ads. And I'm on the fence now. I might drop this. I was kind of excited by it in the first issue. Second issue was like, okay, this is sort of interesting. Third issue, also sort of interesting, but suddenly became a comic I don't want to read with my daughter because of kind of tales of genocide and such in it. And in terms of genocide, this issue continues the story as Supergirl and her likable sidekick, the alien girl, go from planet to planet and find the remains of the attacks of these brigands. And I really was annoyed by Tom King's lack of understanding of astronomy. I know you don't have to know a lot of astronomy to write a comic book about Superman or Supergirl flying between planets, between star systems, but he doesn't understand the difference between a galaxy and a star system, and that bugs the heck out of me. I mean, that is so basic. I know he's grown up reading science fiction. He's probably watched Star Trek. He should understand these things a lot better. He just doesn't care. He's sloppy, is my opinion. He says, well, it's just comics. Let's be goofy or whatever. But he doesn't want to be goofy at all about mayhem and slaughter, people being chopped up into bits, and hundreds or if not thousands of people being slaughtered just to, I guess, to amuse these brigands that we, I'm trying to find artwork to show. So I guess, it could be powerful material, but it's just Supergirl and this girl going from planet to planet and hearing one story after another, and Supergirl is all noble and stuff, but so far unable to. Their goal is just to revenge. Well, the girl's goal is to revenge her father, and Supergirl's goal is just to get some medicine for Crypto. And in all this, they have all this genocidal attacks on planet after planet after planet by people who are just called brigands or something. So it just feels like a mess to me. And, maybe in a different mood, I might say, oh, this is kind of interesting. It's an unusual approach to a comic. And I don't have to expect things to go a certain way. But anyway, I did. I wanted something else, and it wasn't there. And so At number 13 is Mr. Miracle. This one cost only $4, a dollar less than Supergirl. It had 2 less pages. It was 22 pages, and it had 13 pages of ads. And this kind of similar to Supergirl, but I really kind of similar to Supergirl in terms of my emotional arc with it. I really loved the first 2 or 3 issues of this. We're on issue 5 of 6 now. And the story's just gotten kind of muddled and confused. And the art kind of feels muddled and confused to go along with it, I guess. There's still elements here that I think are really cool. A lot of New Gods stuff with Metreon's chair and battling parademons alongside Orion. So it should be really up my alley, but it's just also confused. And hard to see where it's all going and how it's going to wrap up in one more issue. I'll definitely stick with it for one more issue at number, but it was at number 13 on my list. At number 12 on my list is Thor, the Donny Cates run, number 17. And this was probably the weakest issue yet for me. I felt like it was mostly just a conversation with Freya or Frigga and Angela, the fake sister of Thor, who Marvel bought for some reason from Neil Gaiman. And Freya and Angela just chide and chastise Thor and Odin and talk about what a bunch of goofy dolts they are, but still let them be in control, I guess, at the end of the day, just threatening them that they might lose control if they don't get their act together. I don't know, it just seemed like weak sauce to me, and it felt kind of undermining of the godhood side of our characters. I suppose some people might like them being brought down to size by their wives and sisters. And there might be another way to have the same effect, but for me, but for someone like me, just keep it at that mythological level a little bit, and respect the fact that there are hardships and difficulties of being Odin or Thor in that role, and that you're just not some a-hole who your wife despises and looks down upon. Anyway, maybe male sensitivity is getting in the way of my enjoying that. But at number 11 is Groo meets Tarzan. I've already been kind of down on this. Oh, by the way, the Thor comic had only 20 pages, and it was $4. Only 20 pages of actual story. Only 9 pages of ads. So that's interesting that the DC comics actually had more ads, but they had more story pages too. Anyway, back to Groo meets Tarzan at number 11. This is the least good Groo comic I've ever read. It's not terrible. I'm still enjoying it, but compared to the bar set by most Groo comics, it's kind of weak. It follows a similar pattern to Groo meets Conan, which was not one of their best either, but it somehow clicks even less. It's less funny. The purely Groo parts are the funniest. All this to do with Mark Evanier and Sergio Aragonés in the quote real world is very mildly funny. It's just not nearly as funny as Groo stuff is usually. So I think there's another Groo comic in the pipeline, and hopefully that's back up to the level that I've come to expect from Groo. Excuse me. I'm very spoiled where it comes to Groo, I feel. I mean, it's a better comic normally than I actually deserve, or that we deserve. I think it's one of the, over the long term, one of the best funny comics ever done. At least it fits my sense of humor. In at number 10, I want to keep saying this. Groo was 25 pages of story and art, and 1 ad. Batman the Detective, a miniseries from Tom Taylor and Andy Kubert. continues to be really fun and crazy. This is a Batman with resources that feel too great to me, where authorities from all over the world are at his beck and call and will work with him and do whatever he wants. And his level of gear and, I don't know, resources is just sort of so over the top that it is even more of a superpower than it ever was. That his being rich is a superpower, I guess, to the max. But a lot of fun to read. I'm still mostly on a Batman hiatus, and I'm not very tempted to go back and get a lot of Batman comics, but I will read this through, and eventually I will probably get in trade a bunch of the other, particularly the out-of-continuity Batman comics that are coming out right now. I just needed a short break, or a long break from Batman. And, Batman Detective Comics was 22 pages of story and 13 pages of ads. So for your $4, you get 22 pages in these two DC comics. And then, meaning Mr. Miracle and Batman Detective. And then Human Remains from Vault, I was surprised, is only 20 pages of art, and it's 4 pages of ads. It feels as thick as the other comics, but I think it's because it's printed on thicker paper. I think there's literally less actual pieces of paper in this comic, which is fine in terms of, I don't need extra ads. But I thought Vault comics were a little longer than 20 pages, and maybe it just varies with the comic. This is a first time for Peter Milligan, as far as I know, to be working at Vault. Vault is a big up-and-comer comic book company, from my point of view. And this was, Peter Milligan is a little bit different every time. And you think you have him pinned down, and then you don't. This is kind of a sci-fi horror story that is playing with the idea of a world where if you show any over a larger emotion, be it anger, love, joy, or even laughter, these aliens will suddenly appear out of nowhere, if they are aliens, and chop you to bits. And so it's a cool and unusual kind of premise. It wasn't too involving for me in this first issue, and I'm not quite sure why. So I thought it was interesting. I found the art to be kind of standard, kind of beginner indie art. For instance, where, in every one of these panels, it's like a flat shot at about the same distance and everything. There's very little dynamics. And there's kind of a purposefully kind of sketchy line. It just looked very familiar to me art-wise, but not from normal professional comics, but from indie-ish kind of comics. And maybe that could have, for some people, or even for me, been the charm of the book, but somehow that it didn't click with me that way. So anyway, I'm interested to see where this is going and how Peter Milligan can squeeze a story out of this idea. Because at the moment, I feel like, I don't know if these two characters are dead yet or not, but I feel like every character we follow is just going to die a horrible death. So maybe it'll just be a series of horrible deaths. At number 8 is Parasomnia. I love the kind of two worlds, and the feeling that we're now questioning which world really is the dream world, and maybe they're both dream worlds. And the incredible art by Andrea Muti, but I am kind of pissed off at Colin Bunn at this point for not making the story, keeping the story so opaque by issue 4. I still have a little trouble grasping everybody and who they are and where they are. I guess someone was killed here. Maybe part of it is some of the connections might be easier in a trade that with a month in between I'm losing the few subtle clues to put everything together. But man, is that nice art and color. Andrea Muti is now a superstar in my mind of comics. And if you look at a page here compared to that Human Remains, every single panel is doing something different in terms of the way it's making the story move. Maybe some people would argue that's a cliche of professional comics art, and it's actually cool that the artist in Human Remains is not using all those techniques. But I would argue differently. So anyway, it's all really going to depend on how this thing wraps up, what my real opinion of Parasomnia is. If I still don't understand it by the time it ends, and I don't know how many issues there are. This was issue 4, which is often, a lot of Dark Horse comics are now 4-issue miniseries, but it said to be continued at the end of it, which I'm glad of because I still don't understand it. This was 22 pages, and it had 7 ads, and it was $5. $4. It was a $4 comic. Another Peter Milligan from Aftershock. Out of Body, I've talked about this a lot in other videos. I'm enjoying it. It has a kind of familiar feel, even though it's a murder mystery involving astral projection and the stealing of souls and stuff. A lot of the elements, and maybe that's its cleverness, a lot of the elements are your sort of standard mystery solving formula. And I do like how the character who's now trying to solve the mystery in his astral projected form as he lays in a coma in the hospital is discovering things about himself that he doesn't like that much. And so that's a clever use of the mystery formula where you uncover the world is a little different than you thought it was. While you're trying to solve this mystery, you're also learning something about the world around you. So I put ranked this one at number 7. It was $4. It only had 20 pages of art and story, and it had 8 pages of ads. And it's an Aftershock book, and some Aftershock books have now gone completely to the $5 level. But this one is still at $3.99, except for the first issue, which was $4.99. And I'm kind of now, I thought that Aftershock was just switching all their comics to $4.99, but now I'm thinking they're experimenting and seeing if they can raise those prices. So they're doing it with some of their comics, but not all of them, it seems. Yeah, so that was number 7. In at number 6 was BRZRKR, or however you would pronounce this without the vowels, the all-consonant BRZRKR, with Keanu Reeves in the starring role, Matt Kint helping him with the writing, and Ron Garney and Bill Crabtree doing the extremely strong art side of things. We're kind of deep in our story now. It is more a story about, at least as far as we know, about BRZRKR's background, his life story, which started 80,000 years ago. One of the details that bothered me is I don't think 79,000 years ago humans had domesticated horses, nor had they invented the saddle, which came a lot later. And the invention of the stirrup, I guess, came even later, but I don't see stirrups on here. So it's silly of me, but that irritated me. It continues, as you saw in that picture, to toss in as much bloodiness as they can manage. But the main thread of this issue is this woman scientist who is studying BRZRKR for the government, and she now wants to have a personal relationship with him. And in fact, perhaps she wants to sleep with him, but he doesn't want to sleep with her, which I thought was an interesting little twist. She's an attractive, youngish looking woman, and the detail that really bothered me in here is she says, "I have 2 PhDs in physics, behavioral neuroscience, and experimental quantum mechanics degree that I invented. I turned down 2 Nobel Prizes because I didn't want to draw attention to my research." And then, so I guess, I'm supposed to accept this kind of thing, and it happens in movies and stuff where really young, hot women have PhDs. And I'm not saying hot women can't have PhDs, but they're not going to be that young. And they're particularly not going to be that young by the time they've been nominated twice for the Nobel Prize. And also, if you're nominated for the Nobel Prize, everybody knows about your research. So those details, it's silly of me to pick on it, but that just stuck in my head, and I couldn't stop thinking about it while reading the rest of the comic. But I still enjoyed the comic a lot, and I want to see where we're going. There's it still has all the familiar stuff, like the immortal man who falls in love with women and they always grow old. His children grow old, and all of that tragedy of being immortal. There's nothing new here, but it is kind of if you haven't read a lot of stories about someone who's immortal, kind of an interesting thing. And then something different is going on at the end of the comic, so I am really looking forward to seeing what that's about. I heard this is going on hiatus. I hope there's just one more issue before it goes on a bit of a hiatus. I've really been enjoying it, but I feel left hanging a little too much here. Like I need a few more answers of like what that big explosion at the end was all about, because we just have the big explosion, but no explanation that I noticed. So I had ranked that one at number 6. It was $4. It was 24 pages of art, 0 ads. So again, less pages. This one doesn't feel as thick as the Vault comic, but they do use thicker, nicer paper. And I don't mind actually ads at the back, which I have been counting, which is normally what Boom does. They might put ads at the back here, but they didn't. They just ended the story. I'm not sure what the philosophy there is of... It might be that there's, because of shipping problems, a developing paper shortage. And so maybe they just said, well, we'll do a shorter, we'll cut the ads just to save on paper. Because, of course, all of Boom's ads are just in-house ads for other comics. And they didn't put an ad on the back or anything like that. It's kind of a classy back of the issue. Okay, now the champion on pages for $4 was Usagi Yojimbo, The Dragon Below Conspiracy. It clocks in at 28 pages and 0 ads. It is a reprint from, I think I saw a date somewhere, and because it's signed 1989. So it's a reprint from 1989. It's the 4th issue in a 12-issue kind of, for Usagi, a kind of saga, 12 issues. I'm enjoying it a lot. There's lots of fun elements mixing in. The ninjas teaming up with Usagi felt a little more forced to me, plot-wise, than you normally see in most Usagi that I've read so far, where everything just seems to flow naturally, and I never stop and think, well, wait a minute, isn't that convenient that there's a bunch of ninjas for him to team up with? But I did kind of feel that here. But other than that, that's a very small, and it did not stick in my head or bother me. And there's lots of cool character moments for all of or most of the continuing characters that we've seen in these 4 issues. I do think I love Stan Sakai's ability to tell a great story in 1 issue or 2 issues or 3 issues. And it feels less special, kind of in a way, to have him tell a 12-issue story, but still enjoying it a lot. I ranked it at number 5, partially because I've become more blasé. I've read so much Usagi in the past year and a half that I'm kind of taking it for granted. But as I said, 28 pages, 0 ads. Can't wait for the next issue. Always happy when a Usagi appears in my pull, which, without fail, twice a month, 1 reprint, 1 brand new Usagi always appears. Kind of for the novelty of it, I put this one in at number 4. It's Gun Honey from Hard Case Crime, which I think is an imprint of Titan Comics, yes. And this one is written by the founder of Hard Case Crime. It's called Gun Honey. And at the back, there is a little article by the author talking about the origin of the idea and how it was originally a title he pitched to this writer that he likes, who's an Asian woman. And then he made but then she never took him up on it. So he made up his own Gun Honey. And in her honor, he made her Asian, which is a little weird because this Gun Honey is all about distracting men with her sexuality. So I don't know how the woman at the back feels about that, but maybe that doesn't bother her. I don't know. I just, that little detail kind of stuck in my head as I thought about this comic. I really liked the art in here. It reminded me of a 1980s comic, in particular, like the Eclipse and Pacific and First Comics kind of artwork. It almost had a little touch of Val Mayrick for me. Anyway, and it's an interesting kind of thriller, which, thrillers are never usually the top of my genre list, but it's fun to dip into it sometimes. So it's about a woman whose job it is to get weapons to people. Like, say you're in some mobster's impregnable fortress of a mansion, and you want to go in and not have a weapon, but then find the weapon you need under the couch. The Gun Honey will have got it there for you. And she, as is quite obvious by a lot of what goes on in the first few scenes, uses her sexy, curvy body to help her out in this work. So now the government is kind of tagging her to go on a mission for them, and something starts to go wrong by the end of the issue. And so we have to read the next issue. It's on my pull. I put it on there on a whim, and I'm pretty glad I did. I'm having fun reading it. It's kind of it is what it is kind of story. I'm not expecting anything deeper from it than this just kind of guns and sexy women kind of thriller. I put it at number 4. It cost $4. It had 22 pages of story and art and only 2 ads. And of course that article I told you about. And I guess I did not count as ads the cover galleries for all the variant covers. So I guess Titan goes into pretty big on the variant covers. I did not know that. Phew, 14 comics is a lot. We're down to the top 3. At number 3 was 10 Years of Death, which is an odd and kind of weak title, but it was a very strong story, kind of an atmospheric, a story about a really tough prison and a mysterious guard and a bully of a prisoner who everyone's afraid of, and a kind of a murder mystery about that. And it all is a kind of a ghost story, or a supernatural story at least. And it has an interesting framing device in that it is told by a prison guard who is the uncle of this young boy who is telling us the story. So it has this kind of double framing to it, which somehow, that's kind of an old-fashioned thing, like in old stories, particularly old horror stories, where someone else is telling someone else a story. But somehow that gives it a lot of extra resonance here, and a sense of the lives around things, right? The parts of childhood that aren't so great, and the relatives that you might meet who aren't perhaps that successful in life and stuff, combined with this eerie supernatural story. And I really enjoyed it a lot. Really nice colors. The art was good with the occasional panel that seemed a little weak, but overall really good. 40 pages for $7. Oh, super oversized, right? It's basically like a graphic novella. It's interesting that Aftershock, who charges so much money for individual issues, is also putting these out, because it's the equivalent of a trade they could have probably put out and sold for $15, and they sell it for half that much. I don't know if they'll reprint these for the book market or put them all together in a volume, because this is the third or fourth one they've done, and they've all been really good. These 40 to 50 page oversized one shots. I thought maybe they even had a name for this series. Oh, they just call it Aftershock One Shot. But yeah, the writer was Aaron Douglas, and the artist was Cliff Richards, with Guy Major doing the colors. And the writer, Aaron Douglas, is a film and television actor, best known for playing Chief Gideon Tyrol on Battlestar Galactica. So that I thought was interesting, and I thought it was interesting that he is a very good writer of comics right off the bat. So yeah, this was a pure pleasure for me to read. And then at number, I already told you the stats on that. There were along with the 40 pages, there were 8 pages of ads. I actually counted the preview, which I counted this preview as an ad, or each page as an ad. So that was 4 pages, I think. I don't get previews at the backs of comics. I did read this one. I usually don't read them because they don't usually present pages that give you a good sense of what the story is going to be about. It's kind of weird how they do these previews. So it did not. The art's kind of neat, but it did not give me enough. All I can tell from this preview is it's about a young gay man and an older gay man who meet at a disco. And that might be enough for some people, but for me it's not. Hasn't revealed what the story really is yet. So, in at number 2, Adventureman, 26 pages, $4, and 0 ads. There is some 3 pages of back matter where they explain stuff. I thought, when I started reading this, I thought, oh no, I'm not going to remember enough from the previous arc that was just 4 oversized issues. But actually, as I got into it, it all came back to me, and it was really cool the way the story was this mixture of elements, some kind of like a prose, still in comic books, but like we're getting it as if it was written in some kind of pulp prose novel, and some in kind of various points of view. And Terry Dodson's art is excellent. His colors look nice, but sometimes I question if they serve the action because there was a lot of action scenes in here. So anyway, I really enjoyed this. It reminded me how much fun Adventureman is. Because I recently read another Matt Fraction book that was extremely frustrating to me. It's not pure pulp. It's Matt Fractionized pulp in some subtle way, but it never gets too far away from just being fun. The weird thing is, it felt to me like this issue belonged with the last 4 and should have been in the trade. And then you would have had a satisfying semi-conclusion with the adventures to continue. But basically, you read if you've read that trade and you want the end of the story, just read this, get this issue 5. And then a new storyline is going to start with issue 6. And I guess that from the back matter, if I understood right, Matt Fraction's idea is that eventually he'll have a series of trades, each with a cliffhanger. So you get at the beginning of each new trade or each new collection, because so far it's come out in an oversized hardback collection, which I love. Each new collection will begin with the wrap-up of the storyline of the previous one and then start a new adventure. And that's kind of cool, I guess, but it's also a little disconcerting when you before I read his explanation of that, and I still don't know if it's a good idea. I can see what he's after, but anyway, I'm really enjoying Adventureman. There's the cover for the next issue, which looks like some kind of ghost cowboy, ghost rider kind of thing. So that should be cool. They seem to plan, I think it was 4 collections overall. No, 3 collections overall as his first real arc of what he's planned. and then we'll see. I'm not going to tell, he's saying in the back, I'm not going to tell you what my plans for it are after that. Hopefully this project does go on as long as he thinks it will. I feel like normally artists like Terry Dodson and his wife, his partner Rachel Dodson, tend to, do a special short run on something and then move on elsewhere. So will they last for 6 or 8 collections worth, so that Matt Fraction's further plans will continue? But hopefully they'll at least last for his plans for the first 3 collections. So it was a bit close between those 3, at the end of which would be number 1. But in the end, I had to make Echolands number 2 my number 1 book. It has 24 pages, 0 ads, and I should add it has 13 pages of back matter. But I have not read the back matter here, and part of it is, I think, 3 or 4 pages, just 4 pages listing the albums that J.H. Williams listened to while he was drawing this issue, which is a bit over the top, I think, to spend so many pages on that every issue. But there you are. It's his comic. He can do what he wants because it 100% is his comic, and for the most part, that's a good thing because it allowed him to do this crazy layout and do a story with no ads in it, and every page a double page spread. And he continually comes up with new ways to do those double page spreads, and he gives us some new levels of characterization about some of the friends of our heroine, the Red Riding Hood type of character. It still feels like a basic story, of a group of roguish outlaws tackling, perhaps accidentally or perhaps on purpose, the evil overlord of the city, but the fun is in the details, not only in the art but in the characterizations, all of which continue to be interesting. It is strange because our heroine in the very first issue murdered a bunch of people. Now, they were like sort of cops who might have killed or captured them, but still there's a sense of moral ambiguity here, which I don't know whether it's going to be explored on that level. I'm not sure. I think it's still the good guys versus the bad guys, and it was just killing bad guys, perhaps. But I also got the black and white raw edition of the first Echolands, and I've decided to continue doing that, even though it's very expensive. This is a $5 comic for a 24-page story, and now I'm buying it twice. But I really enjoyed seeing the black and white version versus the color. I spent quite a bit of time on that on the Hangout on LahRasa's channel, so I'll put a link below to that Hangout in case you're curious. It's right near the beginning of the video, but the whole video has lots of interesting stuff. So yeah, I'm just loving this Echolands. I hope he can keep up with it. Obviously, he's worked way ahead of time to get these lush issues one after another. It feels like a very short month between the two. If it was, maybe it was just 4 weeks or less between the first 2 issues. And I'm loving it. It also may be really great in hardback if they get really great binding for that. So I'll be reading this week a whole bunch of Batman Hush because I am part of that community crossover. I'm going to be covering Batman number 613. I think it'll be coming out next Monday, my video on that. So yesterday, Sam from Sam's Tangled Web and I met up, and we went to the Arboretum, which is a very tame forest, I guess, with trees of certain types in certain areas, but with a huge sort of tangled web of trails going through it. And we spent a lot of time weaving around and almost getting lost, but never quite really lost. And I think we hiked around there for nearly 2 hours. And then we went for a late lunch at this pub called the Barley Mill, which I hadn't been to in a long time, except just past week I went there with Bob from Everything Comics. So now I remembered it was a good place to go with this sort of semi-COVID restrictions, because they have a whole wall that they can sort of slide away and let the air in. So you can sit inside, but you're sort of outside. Anyway, it was kind of cool. And they have an incredible amount of Grateful Dead themed decorations and Grateful Dead music playing constantly. But despite that, we didn't do any psychedelic mushrooms or anything. We just drank some beer and ate some burgers. And then after that, we went to a comic book store that Sam had been to a few times, and I'd only just noticed that it existed. It's on a less well-traveled street, and it's called Acme Comics, of all things. And it turned out to be just this, it's probably smaller than the room I'm sitting in right now, or maybe the size of the room I'm sitting in right now. Just this narrow little chamber with back issues all along one side, and then the counter on the other side, and a bunch of stuff on the counter. Anyway, but it was actually a really good place for back issue hunting, and one of these places where all the prices are 50% off. So they mark what the price is, and then you get 50% off. So I bought quite a few comics there, and I thought I'd show them. So one thing I found, which was cool to find with Sam, because a number of months ago he told me about this. I did not know that there was an issue of Marvel Team Up where Spider-Man teams up with the original cast of Saturday Night Live. And this is drawn by Bob Hall and inked by Marie Severin. I assume they got her to ink it because she's good at doing caricatures, although it felt like they were drawn very carefully so that they all looked more attractive than they are in real life, I have to say. I haven't read it yet. I've just thumbed through it. So I got it for set. He marks everything up at the top, I guess, with a Sharpie. So it says it's a 7.8 or 7.8. I assume it's a 7 to 8. And he mentions Belushi and Belushi appearance, I guess. But it was marked $7, so that was $3.50. I mean, I have no idea what the going market value of this is, but to me, it's of special interest because I think it cannot be reprinted anywhere because of the appearance of all these actors and all the complicated permissions that would involve. You can tell me if I'm wrong, if it has been reprinted somewhere. And then I found a few of these DC mystery mags from the Bronze Age. I'm trying to collect them all eventually. So anytime I see them at prices that I find easy to afford, I grab them up. So I got this House of Mystery number 243. House of Mystery goes way back, but I'm only interested in the period where it was actually doing their horror mystery stories. Because I think it had superheroes and other things in it before that. And then the series called Ghosts, which I don't see as often and I don't know as much about, but I think it's not too different from the House of Mystery and House of Secrets. This is number 46. Now he said that this one is a 4.0. I don't know. I haven't taken a close look at it. It looks in pretty good shape to me, actually. And then this one is a 7.5, I guess. It's an All-Star Squadron number 8. On the surface, I can't tell how it's different from the 4.0, but I'll have to take a closer look. But for me, grades are a vague thing. I'm just happy if it's what I consider a nice copy. And sometimes I'll accept a pretty beat-up copy. There's certain things I hate to get, though, like warping from moisture and that kind of thing. And this one's, he said, is a 8.0 All-Star Squadron number 21. And this is a series I'm trying to do a complete run of eventually. And another series, and then the rest of these are all the Defenders, which is another series. I don't think I want a complete run, but maybe 1 through 100 would be nice. or there, but 100 I just picked because it's a round number, but I ought to research what I really want. But anyway, all of these are within the scope already that I know I want. And a lot of these are drawn by Sal Buscema. So Defenders number 31. And I believe a lot of them are scripted by Steve Gerber. Defenders number 36. And eventually there's, some of these have Keith Giffen art too. Defenders number 37. And I forgot entirely that Luke Cage was in the Defenders for a while. I wonder if Doctor Strange was paying his salary or something, since he was still the hero for hire. And this looks awesome, number 38, with the return of Nebulon. I think it's his return. But it says now Nebulon. Huh. And I don't know if that version of 25 cents is a regular thing or some kind of special marking. I guess there's all kinds of different, look at these, all three of these different ways of marking the 25 cent part of the logo of the trade dress. And then by issue 44 here, with the Jack Kirby cover, it went up to the high price of 30 cents. I do actually remember, because I started with the 20 centers basically, being kind of upset when it went up to 30 cents. That seemed like too far. And then 40 cents, that was really too far. But I don't feel that way now. But this has a Jack Kirby cover. He did not ever draw the interiors of the Defenders. I think maybe around this point Keith Giffen came on. Defenders number 45, another Jack Kirby cover. I like these Jack Kirby covers from the mid-70s where he's drawing characters that I think he never drew in his previous career at Marvel. Like there's like Nighthawk or the Cat. I don't know if he drew, or Hellcat, whichever she was at that time. I don't know if he ever drew those in regular comics. Here's number 48. Not sure who did that cover. Looks like Joe Sinnott inking to me, kind of. And number 49. This, I would guess, is Al Milgrom, but I'm not sure. Al Milgrom did a lot of covers around this era. Same with this one, I would guess it's Al Milgrom. Number 50. And finally, with lots of floating heads, number 51. So I wonder how long Luke Cage was in the group. But anyway, I always enjoyed Nighthawk in the Defenders, and of course the Valkyrie. So anyway, I was excited to get all those, and so that's your little bonus at the end